Stop. If you have to go back.
We're going to start first in our radio room. We'll make our way up into our combat engagement center. We'll go into captain input quarters and finish off inside gun turret number 1. So, just a warning, quarter side, please watch your head and your step.
Yeah.
Quite painful. Alright, so welcome to Radio Central. This is the most central radio room from here up to the captain's import quarters. It is battle station on the bridge and is at sea quarters. There's more rooms like this scattered throughout the ship, but this is the most primary one. Now, this also has the most unique nickname given to it. It's called the foxhole because, as you saw, the hatch is pretty thick. Back in World War II in Korea, they had 12 of these 2-man desks all around the room, so they had 24 sailors in close quarters. Plus, you had these high-pitched radios powered by large vacuum tubes like these. So not only do you have body heat, but machine heat on top of it. Small space, foxhole. Now, we actually still use devices like these today, except now, let's see if I can get this without falling. A lot smaller. Now, the high-pitched radio, the way it works, is you have the Morse code system, headphones, and a typewriter. You're listening for any form of communication, whether it be from an enemy ship, allied ship, a fellow U.S. ship, or a civilian craft. If you're hearing anything of concern, you're going to type it out over the mill. You're going to pass it to your senior radioman, who takes the coding decoding terminal. From there, the message is delivered straight to the captain. Now, after World War II in Korea, USS Missouri got taken out of service for about 29 years and recommissioned in the 80s and 90s. Part of her upgrade was what we call the RTTY, or teletype. Now, this has a very similar function to its predecessor of radio. The only difference is you can't see that it has a Morse code over there. You're not having a headset, so that it's coming across the screen. Then from there, you can either print it and pass it along to your radioman, or if you're old school, you can type it out on the upgraded version of the typewriter, and then it's the same process. Your senior radioman takes the coding decoding terminal, from there up to the captain. Now, in the very late 80s and early 90s, satellite communication became a thing on the battleships. So what they did was they removed one of the teletypes, and in place would be SATCOM. So as you can see, the Navy never fully got rid of anything. And that's because if you lose one system, cool, you have a backup. If you lose your backup, you have a backup to the backup. Which is why you saw the Christmas tree-like antenna in front of the ship. It's our extender for the high-pitch radio. Now, we actually still use a radio room today, but we don't use any of the equipment. Instead, we use ham radios. So we have radio volunteers that usually come from the Navy ships across the harbor, or sometimes you can have veterans that served on ships years prior. And they help us keep in contact with the other 3 Iowa-class battleships, the Iowa, New Jersey, and Wisconsin. We also have contact with museum ships, such as the Queen Mary, the Midway, and San Diego. We also have communications getting in with the Battleship Texas, Lexington, several other ships throughout the States and the world as well. One of the most important documents that would ever appear in this room is a message that came through the radios on September 2nd, 1945, which is sitting in the tray right there, just in front of the calendar. Now, basically, with some of the message, what it says is that the war is over, we can go home. Now, as you would imagine, the crew in here is going to want to celebrate a little bit, but as I mentioned in World War II in Korea, they had these high-pitched radios that are highly explosive, so they can't be jumping around too much. I'm sure what they did was some handshakes, maybe some of the ship going down or sinking. Now, before they get into this form of communication, there's a few things you got to do. I'm a former fireman, so at this stage, sailors are using my favorite tools, the action hammer, and they're going to smash every single piece of equipment in here. That way, no information is recovered by the enemy. Now, for documents, they're not going to burn it or shred it. Usually on a ship like this, there's a large watertight duffel bag with concrete at the bottom. They slide all the documents in there and toss it over the side of the ship. That way water seeps in and spears the heat. Now today that doesn't work so well because how far we've come with technology. So now on ships they're going to burn and shred it. At this point, the men are going to make their way to life rafts. So the man standing at this corner here, his job is to grab this yellow bag here. As soon as he gets to his life raft, when it hits the water, he pulls out this device here. It's called the Gibson Girl, named rightfully so because the design is curvy, just like the models from the 1800s and 1700s. Now, this is done so intentionally because you do not want to be holding this in your arms. It's about 25-30 pounds of metal, so your arms will get tired. What you do is you're going to put this between your legs and you use this strap here like a seatbelt to secure it. Then you pull out this tube. A portable vacuum tube, and a spool of string. Now, you're going to plug this in right here. You're going to take out the spool. You're going to tie some of it down below the crank here. The rest of it, you're going to tie to the kite antenna. And then you're going to launch this into the air to catch the radio waves.
Oh.
Now, at that point, all you have to do is start cranking on the handle here, and it'll power itself on, and you know it powers on when these lights no longer blink but are solid orange. At that point, it'll send out SOS automatically to anyone nearby, whether it's an aircraft or ship. Now, at that point, the guy's going to communicate what ship he's from, if he's alone in the life raft, if he's with people in the life raft, last known coordinates, and from there it becomes a game of Marco Polo. So if the sound gets too quiet, they know they've gone too far, they got to turn around and try again. As soon as the sound is loud enough, they can then start looking for visual cues in the water. So most of the time in a bag like this, you'd have flares on the outside pocket, it could light, or if you were fortunate on the way out, you could have found the flare gun. Now, in the daytime, it's a little bit easier, as you have the option to use sunglasses or seeing glasses, personal square mirrors, a blade on your pocket knife, a few other options as well. Now, if primary communication fails on the Gibson Girl, even the Gibson Girl has a backup plan. Using this button here, you can transmit Morse code as well. So, even the backup plan has a backup plan. Pretty efficient.
Okay.
Very
Now,
cool.
the Navy actually still uses this device today. It's not the same material anymore, it's more of a carbon material and can float in the water. It's also not called the Gibson Girl anymore. What it's called, I still don't know. I've toured some of the stores over there with my friends being officers. I asked them what it's called today, and they said, we don't know.
Mm.
I was like, oh, great, good to know you, ship. All right, so we'll give to everyone here is a small scavenger hunt. As you can see, we have a coffee pot here. If you can find most of them along the way, I'll tell you while they're in place, aside from sailors being caffeine addicts like myself. Now, they're not all going to look like this one. Some are going to be a little bit fancier, some made for serving instead of brewing the coffee, and there's going to be one room that doesn't have a coffee pot altogether. Sound fair?
Yeah.
Sound good.
All right.
You know,
This is 10 questions. Now, this tells me exactly where I am on the battleship and where I need to go. So, I'm going to start with the top line here. This means I'm on the O1. This is the deck above the main deck, which we were just on. Now, 95 is the door frame we're currently at right now. This tells me basically the working stations that I'm at, which is the L right here. This, number 1, tells me that I'm on the starboard side of the ship. Anytime you see an odd number, that's how you know what side you're on.
Okay.
If it's an even number, then you're on the port side. If it's 0, you're dead center of Battleship Missouri.
Oh.
So, sailors had to memorize this, that way they could find their way around the ship altogether.
Wow.
Alright, make sure when we're going up that you don't only watch your head, but also your... Alright, so, just a couple things before you enter CEC. Now, first things first, don't worry about closing the hatch behind us. It's secure in place for a reason. I know it seems like common sense, but I guess try to pull it shut and about where it's most of the time to do so. So I just ask that the last person behind us closes this door only, and that's to preserve all the artifacts you have on display inside here.
Correct. Okay, we may have to metal door.
Wow.
Right, and I'll have folks kind of gather in this open space. I'm going to talk about a few things, and then I'll let you walk around. Now, this is CEC, known as Combat Engagement Center. This is formerly the Admiral's Quarters on board Battleship Missouri back in World War II in Korea, which at that time, put this handsome fellow here, Admiral Halsey. We'll talk more about him in the next stop. Now, battleships in World War II in Korea were known as the flagships, but when they re-entered service in the 80s and 90s, they were no longer needed as flagships, as that's what the aircraft carriers became. So that's where all the admirals would be. So they took out all the admirals' quarters and furniture, and they replaced it with all the stuff you see now. Now, we're going to start with the blue chair. This is for an officer called TAO, Tactical Action Officer. He oversaw everything being plotted on the boards, communications, radar, weapons being fired, etc. Now, with that being said, you can see that we have several different forms of communication here. Now, we're going to start with the red phone. It works as a secure line. It cannot be hacked or tapped. Primarily used to communicate between U.S. ships to U.S. ships, U.S. ships to allies, and in the event of absolute emergency, we have the black phone here, which works like everyday house phone if they still exist. Not so sure with the kids and their cell phones and all that. But what it's used for is communicate from Battleship Missouri to the state of Virginia for Navy HQ. And I'm sure you had a sailor or two try to call home. They're not supposed to, but I'm sure there's been a few attempts. And finally, the best communication device we have to offer is a sound-powered microphone. Now, the way this version works, it's a World War II era one, is you strap the microphone around your chest so the mic sits right here, and then you put the headset on. Now, anyone in the room can hear you at this point because it's like a game telephone with 2 tin cans and string attached. Now, if you want to use it to communicate level to level, you can, as you would use the cord here, plug it in, which it's already plugged in. At that point, you have to select a channel of who you're trying to reach. Now, real quickly, I need a volunteer to be my acting TAO.
Go ahead.
No hesitation, I like it. Alright, so go ahead and take a seat real quick. Now, you're my TAO, I'm the sailor, and you're telling me what I need to write on the plot board here. But if I'm standing in front of you like this, can you see everything I'm putting on the board?
Yeah, battle group, yep,
So you can see that, but not the rest of this, yeah?
that's right.
Alright, good eye. So, we can stand back up again. What the Navy does is they pay their sailors to go to college and learn how to write backwards legibly. So when they come back to the ship, they're actually going to take the pathway there and walk behind the board. Why is that line down? Excuse me.
Oh.
So essentially they'd walk behind there and they'd use a grease pencil, write backwards, and we would see it written the proper way.
Got it.
Now, this is Operation Will from 1987. It was drawn out by memory from a former crew member on board who came to visit a while ago. He didn't look at books, schematics, nothing, just straight from memory. Now, this is USS Missouri right here. These were all the ships that were with us in our group at that time. So we have some destroyers, frigates, submarines, aircraft carriers, support ships, all sorts of cool things in that group. Now, before we get into the awesome part of the weapon systems here, there's one other thing we've got to address. Mapping tables and radar. So on the back side, you're going to see that we have two systems for radar. That's for surface radar, looking for anything on the water. So that's surface submarines, civilian craft, enemy ships, ally ships, friendlies, anything you need. Now, next to the mapping table, the radar, you can see that we still have our mapping table and tracing table. Now, that's for a few different reasons. First, sometimes technology fails, so we need a backup to keep track of our whereabouts at all times, using my mapping table and tracing table. But also, the radar tracks our enemies. So, using the mapping table and tracing table, we can actually help the radar triangulate the target a lot better. And also, the mapping table in particular helps us navigate through tight canals. For example, the mouth of Pearl Harbor or Panama Canal. Finally, here on the left side and far into the right corner over there, we have radar that tracks aircraft, which goes out for a full 250 miles. Now, it tracks anything from jets, helicopters, cargo, planes, drones, incoming missiles, and even projectiles. Now, the reason I bring this up first before the weapons is it actually works hand in hand with the anti-aircraft system on board USS Missouri, the CWIS, or known as Closed Weapon System, or the manufacturer calls it Phalanx Gatling Gun, or the sailors call it RTD2, because that's what it looks like, just with a big machine gun sticking out. Now, the thing about the CWIS is it has a non-visible laser that goes out for a full 300 yards. So as soon as something hits 300 yards on the radar over there, it activates the CWIS and it's going to start moving and tracking whatever's in range until it's gone. It's not going to fire automatically, but it will track it. The only way it's going to fire is by say-so of the TAO to the operator here. The operator then flips a switch, presses a button, or turns a key. This console is kind of unique because it has all three. Now, it fires 50 rounds per second or 3,000 per minute. And every other round on the CWIS does have a tracer. You can see where the bullets are flying. So it's pretty cool. It's like a laser light show almost. Now, in the center here, we have our Harpoon missile consoles. Harpoon missiles were used for ship-to-ship combat. We had 16 of them on board and only ever fired one. And that's because throughout Battleship Missouri's history, including World War II and Korea, she's never seen ship-to-ship combat. Battleship Missouri's only ever been used on land targets and anti-air. The only reason why they fired one was in RIMPAC of 1990, and that was so the crew knew how to use them in case the occasion arose. Now, we then have our best upgrade, the Tomahawk cruise missile in the far corner over there. With an accuracy range of 1,000 miles, we had 32 of them on board. We fired 28 of them, technically 29, but number 29 had a mishap and burned a nice hole through the launcher. And the remaining, I can neither confirm or deny, may or may not have been nuclear. So do with that as you will. Now, with those, we do have a pretty interesting story. So, it was coming out of the end of Operation Desert Shield, going into Desert Storm. We were receiving coordinates to fire on the island of Kuwait, and in the process of receiving the coordinates, no one knew the enemy had actually changed their position. So when we fired the Tomahawks on the given target, we didn't hit the enemy, but instead we hit camels. So rest in pieces, quite literally. Now, the lights you see in here, this is not at all how they look normally. Normally, what you're going to see in here is blue light. And that's because, number one, your eyes will not have to adjust to white light like this when going out the ship, or when you go back out into the sunlight. Blue light also doesn't travel, and then it's easier for your eyes to focus on things like the clockboard, screens. It helps you stay awake, and it does not produce migraines like red light did in World War II in Korea, which is why there's a tube missing out of the panel. They removed the red light altogether, save for the hallways as you saw through it. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do for you folks is I'm actually going to transition to the blue light back in the day. All I ask is that you stay still because it's going to get a little bit pitch black for a few seconds here. So this is how it would look, 24/7, 365.
Oh, wow.
Unless I had to do repair work on the wire systems or computers, and they'd have white light then. The only light that actually be on would be this one right here. That way the officer can see what he's doing. So you can feel free to take a seat, sit around in battleship for a few seconds, and we'll head out here in about a minute. Alright, and just grab the door behind you. Perfect. Alright, so this is the captain's inner port quarters. This is where he'd stay when the ship is docked at port like it is now. Now, Battleship Missouri's technically had 23 captains. Two of the most notable would be the first captain, which is Captain Callahan over here, and then Captain Case. He was the first and only captain to recommission and decommission a battleship. Now, most of the time, the captain actually leaves alone. This has been a tradition since the Navy's birth in the 1700s. So that's where this window comes into the picture here. When the captain's in here, he's primarily doing desk work. He'll knock on that window over there. His steward prepares his meal, leaves it on the counter, the captain picks it up, goes back to work. This probably brings a question: why is there a nice big table in here? And that's because sometimes the captain entertains dignitaries, whether it be U.S. or foreign. It could also mean entertaining other ship captains as well, or high-ranking officials of the military and other branches as well. Now, all the furniture you're seeing in here is not wood. Everything on the walls is actually metal painted to look like wood for fire safety purposes. Also, through the door we just came through and the one we're going to be exiting out of would be a pair of Marines, as you're not allowed to be in here unless either A, you're the captain, or the remaining two reasons. You're invited or in trouble. I don't know about you, but I'd rather be invited and not in trouble. Now, I'm going to give you a few minutes to explore the captain's cabin. So, standard apartment size for 2 bedrooms.
Wow. So cool. It's pretty good. I also going to use all of the tools.
Where two of you can take a seat on the left side, and one on the right side, or another one can take a seat. The other two of us, we're gonna have to remain standing. All right. All right. So, welcome to gun turret number 1. Now, realistically, where the sailors actually enter from is at the very bottom of the turret, 5 decks below, and they have to climb their way back up in this area here. So where we came from, make sure I'm not over. Where we came from is emergency exit / entrance. The only time they can come through here is when battle stations are called and they have to rush inside. So from this point, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you a little video here that shows you how the turret actually ran and operated in more detail than I could actually explain clearly.
And if you came through the other way, where would you, where's the ingress?
You would come out to that over there. Number 2 open, so you can kind of peek your head in there and actually see what it looks like. You can see the recoil counter system on the side of the barrel, one of the shells loaded into the tray. It's pretty cool in there.
Want to go? What's that? Coffee machine? Yes.
There you go, good eye. So, the reason why they have coffee is the men can't use nicotine in their valve stations. So if they can't smoke, they have their caffeine instead.
Yeah.
Whether it be coffee or tea.
Is this called?
So that's just the gun barrel room. So we have number 2 here, number 1 on this side, and number 3 on the far side.
And no one will be there when it's engaging, right? It's only when you want to service.
So, if you notice, there's a red line back there, well, your eardrums. In here, it's more about 100, 150. But aside from just regular earmuffs, they have the inserts underneath as well. Even with the double layer protection, they still need your hearing aids by the time they're done.
How are they communicating with all that?
Radio. So we have a radio right here. We
But you have to
also,
remove all of this before you can communicate, and then you're sort of flying blind
Sometimes.
for a while, right? When you're operating it.
sometimes. Otherwise, through a loudspeaker, they can hit echoes and reverbs through your pretty easy. So it bounces off, and they can hear it through that. Most of the time, it's only the commanding officer and you're getting order anyway. So he just slightly pushes your mouth back and then fired. Well,
Yeah.
sucks. It's
Yeah.
gonna be painful.
Yeah.